All right, so this is one of my what I playfully call conversations with Todd. I try to do this once a quarter or so, where we just allow you to ask a question, maybe about something I've said or something I've not talked about that you're curious about. If you'll keep your questions brief, that'll help us get to more of them, because I'm fairly long-winded, as you probably know. This was started, I called it Conversations. I've been doing this for years. I think I was doing it in Louisville too, so it's been a long time. But back then there was a series of books that were out called Conversations with God. And I thought, that'd be a fun title, Conversations with Todd. Not that I think I'm God. Yeah, right. Just what would Freud say? I just thought it would be fun. So it's not really a conversation, it's more sort of an opportunity to respond to some questions. And see, Nancy has the microphone, so if you do have a question you'd like, just raise your hand and Nancy will come. And that way our friends who are live streaming with us will be able to hear the question as well. By the way, I don't want to address church business. This is more for grander conversation. We can do that at church business meetings.
Todd.
Just hold it up just a little closer.
Todd.
Yep.
Speak to us about community.
Speak to us about community. Okay, geez, that's a very broad question. I have to think about it. What would I say about community? You know, it's I guess what comes to mind, the first thing I'm sort of wrestling with is one, as human beings, I think we need community. All of us. And so communities come in very different sizes, and we're all part of communities of different sizes, right? We have a family community, we have a neighborhood community, we have a community of the people we're closest to, our friends and family, we have maybe a church, a club, these different types of organizations we belong to. We belong to a neighborhood, a city, a state, a country, a planet, a species. So I think that's probably part of the trouble with answering it, is that there are so many communities, but we all have to have community. I remember the first few days after my book, The Gadfly Papers, was released years ago. For those who don't know, wrote this book critical of our religion and handed it out during a Unitarian Universalist meeting. And just within hours, all hell broke loose. You'd have thought I'd thrown a bomb in the middle of the conference. But the forces who were really bothered by this really worked immediately to detach me from any communication with our church. And so that connection was severed, and I had no idea what was going on. In fact, the UUA sent people in and intentionally told me not to come to my own church. And so it was a week, if you can imagine, without finding out how you guys were. In retrospect, I would not have let that happen, but nevertheless it did. But I remember, just Peggy and I both just being in an almost fetal state. You know, we couldn't eat, we didn't get out of bed. It was just a real time of soul sickness for us. And it was largely because we were detached from any sense of connection to anybody. We didn't know where we were at. And then finally, the Thursday following, thank goodness we were having a meeting here at the church, and I came and was greeted warmly by my friends here and said, okay, we're going to be okay. I'm a human being again. That was the feeling. So I don't think that community is something that we can live without. I really don't. I think no matter how introverted we are or how isolated we like to be, we all need to feel like we belong to others. The problem is that a lot of us maintain those connections in very unhealthy ways. One way is to let others dominate who we are so that we can't fully express ourselves. We end up in relationships where we feel like we have to hide our true selves or pretend to be somebody we're not in order to belong. That's not a good way to be in community. Another way is the opposite, and that is to try to force everybody around us to do what we want. Right? It's kind of a malignant, authoritarian way of being, where we constantly demand, like maybe people going through the terrible twos. We want our way. We want to be individual, and yet we want to belong too. So therefore, I'm going to solve that by making sure everybody I'm with does what I want. And those people just make life hell, don't they? I'm quite sure that's what Sartre meant when he said hell is other people. But heaven is other people too. That's the thing. So I think the really important thing about being in community is, one, be respectful of the autonomy of others. People are not extensions of ourselves, and it's not only is it not healthy to think that you're in relationship people by forcing your way on them, but it's not really community. It's not kind, it's not just. And so don't behave that way in community, but also recognize that you need community, and that community does involve some give and take. Okay, I think I'll be quiet about this. It's not that important. I guess that's kind of my initial response to the question. Fundamentally, we are social beings and we need community. We'd be lost without it. And that need is the source of much joy and happiness and contentment in life, and it is also the source of much joy and sorrow and misery. And we should do our best to make sure that those in our lives are enhanced by our presence in theirs rather than made miserable by us. Yes, so we've got...
I'd just like to...
Oh, okay. We'll go here and then behind Don and then over to Dan, okay? So, yeah, okay. Go, Don. Just hold it just a little closer. Just hold it a little closer, Don.
Your relationship with Happy Watkins and how exceptional that was. And I just wonder if you had any comments or reflections along that line.
Yeah, Happy Watkins, for those who don't know, now has passed away a year or so ago, was the minister of New Hope Baptist. Yeah, I was going to get it mixed up with another friend's church. And Happy had been a regular speaker here before I came. Not regular, but I think once a year or so he came. He was very beloved in the community for reciting Dr. King at a lot of events, particularly as I have a dream speech each year at the MLK parade. But shortly after I came here, Happy and I were introduced by Doug Hugan, actually, who took us to lunch. For those who remember Doug, took us to lunch, and Happy and I became just fast friends. We just really, really liked each other. And the great thing about Happy, he is a traditional Baptist, not a Southern Baptist, thank goodness. but an American Baptist, and fairly conservative community. But he was always in the right place on social events, social issues. So he became very involved with me in our church, actually, in the move to pass marriage equality in our state. And he, for those who don't know, we had 16, this is before we had readjusted the loft here, but we had 16 faith leaders from our community, from just about every religion you can imagine. You had some of the Buddhist nuns here, Catholic priests, Methodists, Presbyterians, Jewish rabbis, Happy Watkins, and we were all dressed in our garb, and we were just right along that wall, and a picture was taken of this line of 17 familiar faces in our community, and we created a billboard out of that called "People of Faith Support Freedom to Marry. Vote Yes on Referendum 74." That was actually taken in our here. You didn't know it because we cut it out and put it on a beautiful background, but Happy was one of those. And he got in a lot of trouble for that. There were people in his larger community that ostracized him, people in his local community who didn't quite understand where he was coming from. He did the same thing when we were really working on getting marijuana legalized in our state. Not necessarily because I'm an advocate of smoking marijuana. I mean, I don't care, smoke it if you want it, but that wasn't the reason. The reason was because of the criminalization of people, particularly people of color, for using marijuana. And that law ended up stopping the number of stop and searches in half just within the first year, within the first 6 months, actually. Cut those stop and searches in half. But Happy, we actually had Rick Steves, who was the sponsor of that, come to our church and speak from the pulpit. And that night, Happy was invited to speak with Rick Steves downtown at an event. And Happy advocated for legalizing marijuana, something he also got in trouble for. And he used to blame me for that. He'd always say, "Todd has got me in a lot of trouble." But it was just astonishing to me that that his heart was just in the right place, regardless of where his head was at or what his beliefs were. He always did. And I think, he and I were very different in our theological beliefs, but our hearts were right in tune with each other, and that's probably why we became such fast friends. And I'm sad just to talk about him being gone, because he was such a great support to me in many ways, particularly during the sort of crisis we all went through, showing up at the house, bringing coffee and checking on Peggy and I. It's just, so I miss him, but not forgotten for sure.
Just wondering if you'd be willing to share something that brings you great joy right now and why.
Something that brings me great joy right now and why. There's probably a lot of things. I'll mention a couple of things. Firstly is my dog Wiley. I do not understand the connection I have with this beast, but I found him as a puppy 3 years ago in the road, starving to death, scrawny, and he was quite an awkward-looking thing. He had paws that were as big as my feet, and ears that both went the same direction, and a tail that dragged on the ground. He was truly an ugly duckling. But he's grown into this 95-pound beast that is almost as tall as I am when he stands up and licks me in the face every morning. It's a beautiful dog. He's a Doberman Pinscher German Shepherd mix, exact mix. And we ended up bumping into his brother. So he and his brother get together every couple of months now. So we know a little bit of his background. But he has, if you imagine a gigantic Doberman Pinscher that has the markings of a German Shepherd, that's what he looks like. And he's just an incredible being. We're very connected, as Peggy could attest. Brings me joy every day. He jumps up on the bed and lays right against me. And then when I wake up, he gets out of bed like he hadn't seen me for days, and starts running through my legs. I'm the only one he can do this with, but he runs through my legs like a cat 3 or 4 times. And anyway, there's a connection that I've never had with an animal before, And so Wiley, as you can tell just by my expression, brings me a lot of joy. He's been a great source of happiness in my life. The other thing I'll talk about is for those who don't know, the last 3 years ago I took a 25% pay cut here at church. It's necessary due to a downturn in our income, and that's equivalent of $25,000 a year. So it's about 3/4. So this year, the board and I got together and renegotiated my contract so that I'm now a 3/4 time minister. I think there should be an article in the Sun about this, which has actually given me time that I haven't had before. So my contract has always allowed me to take 1 day a week off, but it's been very generous in the vacation time. So 4 weeks vacation and 4 weeks of study leave, and 6 months of sabbatical time every 5 years. But we never had the money for the sabbatical, and I just never take. I mean, have you ever known me to be gone for 8 weeks? Right. So I'm compensating myself now with time. And the big shift is I now take Mondays and Tuesdays off. You can't believe what that's like. I just try to stay away from emails and any kind of thing that's not an emergency. That's been a big shift. And I'm going to try to take more vacation time. I still haven't scheduled any, so we'll see how that goes. But I will be taking, in addition, a sabbatical every February. So I'll be gone all of February. Some of you are probably saying, well, that's miserable. Why February? I like the cold and the dark. But in my time, I know this is a long answer. I think you all know that. No, you don't all know, but I'm a big believer in technology and the direction it can take us. I'm not saying it will, but I also ascribe to the philosophy that we should try to create the future we want rather than worry about the future we fear, the future we don't want. And technology, to me, is a way of solving a lot of our greatest challenges. And I wanted to do more with it. I sort of came back from Singularity University in 2018 with this idea that, with my skills, I can help people alleviate some of the unrealistic worries and concerns that we have around exponentially changing technologies. And I won't go into why I say they're unrealistic, other than to say neurologically and psychologically we're wired for fear. And so we tend to be fearful, even when there are other ways of looking at things, and we can't see outside of that fear space, if you will. So I wanted to use my skills to help with that, and this extra time has allowed me to work on a project called Singularity Sanctuary that people can join, and there's lots of items on that website, singularitysanctuary.com, newsletters and videos and those sort of music that help people perhaps feel a little less stressed about technology. That has brought me a lot of joy. I'm very enthusiastic about working on that project in my spare time. So thanks for asking.
We just finished a year, or are finishing a year, where we had all three areas of the government under basically supporting one party. And my question to you is, what do you see from a standpoint of optimism for the coming year, for 2026, changes that may happen that may solve, at least start to solve some of the problems that we have nationally?
Well, that's a great question. I am somewhat optimistic. I mean, it's miserable right now, and there's a lot of damage being done, and we're not just going to be able to flip the switch when if and when there's a new party in place. It's going to take some rebuilding. I don't think we will rebuild. I think we'll transition into another way of being, as a country and as a planet. But I do think we will transition to something more positive, and got a few reasons for that. One, our government has been so dysfunctional for so many decades, it's not been able to really accomplish anything, right? You almost always have a divided government. In fact, despite, blaming the Democrats, if you look at, since 1970, the Republicans have been in charge of the White House 20% longer than the Democrats, and have had much longer periods of an undivided government like they have right now, right? So keep blaming the Democrats for the horrible things that they've done to the country, but the Republicans have been in charge for decades, mostly in charge for decades. And when they're not in charge of everything, it's a divided government, so they're able to create gridlock so that nothing can really be done. So that's the country we've lived in, right? I think that even people who supported Donald Trump, in perhaps some reasonable hopes that he would help break that dysfunctional system by breaking it if necessary, didn't really understand what breaking it might look like and how breaking it might impact all of us. Well, I think they're learning that now, and that's a really valuable lesson, that how we vote really matters. It can't just be an emotional whim. We have to dig deep and think about things and look at consequences of our choices. So I think that lesson is being learned right now, learned the hard way. So that's a good thing. I'm going to be speaking later at the end of this month, I think. I read a book recently called The Storm Before the Calm. And it's written by a social scientist who, he wrote this book back in, I think it was around 2019 or so. It was before Biden was elected, but it was after Trump had been elected the first time. And he says, you got to get the personality out of it. Don't look at who the president's going to be, because it's about these social cycles that happen, economic cycles that happen, political cycles that happen about every 30 years. And we're going to have two of them happen into 2020s, regardless of who's president. And it's really the sign of the end of an era. In this case, the Reagan era. You can go all the way back to the earliest presidents and trace these systems down. But to have two of them come together, like two hurricanes coming together, is going to create massive chaos in the 2020s. And he predicted everything that was going to happen today, not who's going to get elected, but that things will be so bad we'll question whether or not our democracy can survive. Those sort of statements are made. But he says, but in 2028 that'll shift. There will be a new person who will represent a shift to a new mindset, a new way of being in this country, maybe in the world. And the 2030s are going to be far more prosperous and happier than they have been for decades in this country, because of this new mentality, this new approach to government, a new approach to democracy that we haven't had in a long time. So I'll be speaking more about that at the end of the month, but I think that has given me a lot of, seeing the bigger picture has given me a lot of reason to hope that we're going to get through this. Thanks, Tom, and then you grab it after that, Tom, so thank you. Yes?
Does the church have, or has it thought of or considered having any kind of investments, CDs or land equity or anything to help sustain the people that work here?
Well, yes, we do. I won't go too much into it, but we have an incredible endowment fund that when I came back in 2011, I think had $190,000 in it. And we decided soon thereafter to let it sit and not take advantage of it, let it get to about $500,000. And then we would be able to use some of the proceeds from that to go into our general budget. And I think the first year, we got that 500,000 very quickly, much farther, sooner than anybody realized, because the church really got behind it. And the first year, I think it was around 15,000 went into our general budget, and this year it just reached over 1 million, and now it's contributing to our congregation to the tune of somewhere between 35 and 45,000 a year. So it's really amazing, and the way an endowment works is we never touch the principal or the gains. Actually, we're just a little bit at the end of the year in profit that we can get 3 or 4% of, and if we dip into the endowment, it would reduce the amount we could get. So if we look, I don't know what the number is actually, but if we added up everything we've made or earned from that endowment over the years, it would probably be, I'm guessing, between 150, 200,000 by now. So that's a sustainable income. When I first came, we were getting over 90% of our income was coming from pledges. So we vowed to try to reduce that as much as possible from other sources. So that's a huge source, and it's very wisely invested. The team that handles that has just done beautiful. They've never made a mistake with our endowment fund, and they continue to shift it around when it needs to be. And now it's in a place out in Seattle called the Seattle Fund, which is doing great things with it. So, yeah, good question. It doesn't answer everything we need, but if somebody wants to donate, 2 or 3 more million to it, we might be able to sustain ourselves at the rate we'd like.
Yeah. A question I have, it's kind of a broad question, but I'm sure you have some thoughts about it. White Christian nationalism is beginning to dominate our country and our churches and a whole lot of other things. Freedom of religion, the whole idea of democracy, and its threat to democracy. What do you think people can do, either at our church or as individuals, can do to try to offset the impact of white Christian nationalism?
Yeah, it's a good question. I wouldn't necessarily agree that it dominates. I think that they are certainly far more outspoken than they have been in a lot of years, due to the political reality that frees them to express themselves in ways in which they're not embarrassed, in which they should be embarrassed. And to me, perhaps the most concerning thing about them is we have people in positions of power like J.D. Vance, who goes out and supports this mindset and openly expresses it. And it's funny because when they speak of themselves as if they are the patriots, as if they are the revolutionaries, as if they are the ones who are standing up for American values, for freedom, for justice, for all those things that we like to say that we stand for. It's a difficult mindset for me to understand because of that, right? I find it to be an utterly twisted group of people who are within their own echo chamber and feed themselves and are mostly delusional. And they are dangerous in the sense that if they were able to create the sort of country that they want to create, it would be miserable. I don't think that's going to happen. I think there are far more of us who recognize this is not the way we want to go, and they don't have to be Unitarians to want that. So this is a subgroup that has gained a platform, in my opinion, far more than a movement that is growing and becoming the new reality for our country. I don't think that's something we have to worry about. As far as what we can do as a community, I think we just need, as I often say, when there's any sort of negative circumstance that has impacted our larger community, to go back to Mary's original question, our community as a nation, that has shifted the dynamics, the power dynamics, that the only thing we really can do is what we can do, right? That's the whole Stoic philosophy. There are some things in our power and some things not in our power. We tend to focus on things that are not in our power, How can I stop the white nationalists from thinking what they think or doing what they do? I can't. But I can be myself, and I can represent my values and do the things I do to try to make my community prosper and try to make the world a better place for others. And that's what we have to do. Be ourselves, do what we can, say what we believe, even if it's uncomfortable and difficult. Okay, maybe one more, if there is one more. Okay, Dale's got a...
You hear me okay?
Yes.
Speaking of values, I really appreciate your values. Recently, you gave a sermon, I think it was the second time you gave it, about your interaction with the white buffalo calf.
Mm-hmm.
I totally appreciated that sermon because it really struck me as you opening a little bit to the whole congregation about yourself and your feelings about things like that in nature. And at the time you said, don't expect too many more sermons like this. What can we as a congregation do to request that you do more sermons like that?
Yes. Nothing. Well, I was partially kidding when I said that. It was a very unusual sermon for me. This sermon about my experience with the white buffalo obviously was a story that addressed, for those who weren't there, and I'm not going to give the whole sermon again, but there were just a lot of synchronicities right around that story. Very difficult to explain, right? So it was a mystical experience, by which I mean I don't have answers for it. I wasn't trying to explain to you why it happened or how it happened. I just explained what happened. And I explained the impact it had on me as being a meaningful experience. And you know, what I will say is that I remain a mystic, fundamentally. Right? If you study philosophy, you become a mystic, because philosophy is about perennial problems. You know what a perennial problem is, right? It means there's no answer. And so you spend your life wondering what the answers are. So that's really what feeds my sermons, right? As I've said before, I'm very seldom up here telling you how it is. I'm taking on a problem, and I'm telling you the reasons why I think this might be what it means, or this might be the solution, or this might be an approach. Mostly, I feel like my work as a minister is in the tradition of the shaman or shamanism, where the shaman would take some sort of ingest something, peyote, ayahuasca, whatever, and go into the spirit world, as they would say, and they would come back, they would find answers, and they'd come back and share those with the people, with their people. Sometimes figure out what's causing someone to be ill, or what's harming the community, or some truth that we all need to be aware of. And so that's how I approach preaching, right? That instead of taking ayahuasca or peyote, I'm always searching the cloud of unknowing, which today actually happens to be a cloud in which all of human knowledge is commingling. And I can go into that and find threads that connect ideas, and maybe I can see patterns. And then I come back and I share with you what I saw, in the hope that it might be beneficial. So in many ways, I see my sermons as part of that mystical process, even if I don't necessarily talk about white buffaloes or, those sort of things. So hopefully that answers. Yeah, that's probably good. It's about 12:04, which is earlier than I usually let you out, but why don't we go ahead and move into our closing song? Thank you.